So, Nick, welcome back to Mea Culpa. Lots going on, lots to talk about, and the hour goes by too quick to waste time with greetings and salutations. So I'm going to just jump right into it. All right, my friend. All right, I want to start with Judge Merchan's denial of Trump's motion to dismiss. Let me ask you this. What do you believe was the most compelling legal reasoning behind Judge Merchan's decision to deny Trump's motion?
Well, I think it's basically everything that Trump did with respect to trying to conceal the Stormy Daniels situation was all personal. None of it was an official act. Nothing had anything to do with the official powers of the President of the United States, nothing to do with the powers he has under the Constitution. I think that at the bottom line of the whole opinion is really what carries the day. And the way that Merchan was able to do it by even citing to Pecker's testimony, who was the other individual that was involved with you and Trump, where Pecker was not even a government employee, and yet he was testifying to the exact same things that were going on in the White House and what was happening after Trump became president. So to say that those were official acts just because he was president, he really put the stake in the heart of that. I thought he did a really good job. And on top of it, he went through every single argument that was raised by Trump, including the fact that most of this stuff was never raised at trial and therefore waived. And even though it had been waived, he still went through every single item to show that these were unofficial acts. It had nothing to do with the official powers of the President of the United States.
So wait. So you're saying that if it was waived or if it wasn't raised at trial, therefore it's waived. Is that a mistake by Trump's defense counsel?
Yeah.
Or did they just rely on the immunity clause, thinking that that was going to ultimately be their, we'll call it, get out of jail free card?
Well, I think they made a mistake. I mean, if they really were serious about this immunity issue, they would have raised it at every angle they could have. But there were a whole series of items, mainly evidentiary items, that they claimed before Merchan should not have been allowed in because they were official acts of Trump. They never raised that below. In fact, in some situations, Merchan pointed out that they're the ones that put most of that stuff into evidence, like his practices as president in the office and bringing out that information, I think, from even you and from others to try and make the argument that Trump was so busy he didn't really understand what he was signing with those checks that were made out to you. So Merchan basically turned all that around and stuck it to Trump for having put that stuff in himself. So how can you complain about that when you haven't even raised it, number one, as an issue below, but number two, put it into evidence yourself? That's absolutely the worst position you can be in as a defendant in a situation such as this.
I mean, look, let me be clear about something. Merchan did not just haphazardly create this decision and order. I mean, this is a 41-page decision and order, despite the fact there aren't that many issues that were really being claimed by defense counsel to be in contention. 41 pages, and they are specific, citing to each and every allegation that defense counsel raised, and then some, sort of going into the whole presidential immunity, despite the fact, as you stated, that this all occurred, one, before he was president, and two, not in the course of presidential activity.
Right. And what he was doing was he actually went through this in minute detail because he knows that Trump is going to appeal this to the Second Circuit. And then when he loses in the Second Circuit, he's ultimately going to appeal it to the Supreme Court. And I think this decision really puts the Supreme Court in a bind. I don't see how they cannot affirm this decision. It is so well reasoned. It goes through every single aspect. And like you say, certain issues that weren't even raised by the parties. I mean, he was very exhaustive, knowing that his opinion would ultimately be reviewed by the U.S. Supreme Court.
Right. And it's now, of course, going to be brought up, as you just said, the Second Circuit on appeal. Walk my listeners through the process here. first and foremost, sentencing in this case was supposed to be 4 months ago, give or take, right? It was like
Right.
June,
That's right.
July, August, September, October, December. Yeah, four plus months ago, which obviously did not take place. It was delayed at a motion request and so on. Walk my listeners through what's going to happen potentially before January 20th, which is the day that Trump is inaugurated.
Right. Well, first of all, there is another motion to dismiss that is pending. Trump on December 3rd filed another motion to dismiss his conviction, essentially claiming now that he's been elected president, he can't be prosecuted, he can't be interfered while he's trying to get ready to take over the presidency, and that essentially the election exonerated him from any of the charges, which is completely ridiculous. So I think that what we're looking at right now is that Marshawn is going to shoot that one down in the next couple of days. I expect sometime within the week, we're going to get another decision denying that motion. And at that point, he's going to set a date for sentencing. So he's got essentially two choices at this point. He can either sentence Donald Trump before January 20th, before he becomes president, or he can put the whole matter on hold until after Donald Trump serves his 4 years as president. It's kind of hard to believe he's going to put the whole thing on ice for 4 years. And certainly if I were the judge, I would be sentencing him before January 20th when he becomes president. Now, that begs the question, well, what if he gets jail time? And look, I think there is a very good shot that he could get sentenced to some kind of jail time here. Don't forget, you served 3 years for the exact same crime, right? Same case.
6 years.
Six years. Okay.
3 years incarceration, right. 3 years supervised release.
Right. And then you've got Weisselberg, who he put behind bars for, I don't know, a total of years for unrelated things. But again, he was a central player in this whole cover-up with respect to the checks that were paid to you. So if I were the judge, I'd be pretty hard-pressed not to give a sentence of imprisonment here. Now, if he does, what he can do is he can just put that on hold and stay the prison sentence until such time as Trump is no longer president. I mean, I think that is the proper way to go here, but we'll have to see.
Do you really think that that's the right thing to do? You know, I was quoted in a Vanity Fair article. I think that Bragg and I think that the DOJ and the methodology of the courts with the lengthy delay in sentencing, or I should say more in the decision for the motion practice, really gave Trump the opportunity to skate. I hate the idea. I hate it. I don't care if it's Donald Trump or not. And I want my listeners to understand where I'm going with this. I hate the fact that the President of the United States, forgetting again the fact that it's Trump, will be heading in to the White House with this black mark on him as a convicted felon, having to now go and to do the business of the United States, of all of us, for all of us, as a convicted felon. I hate that had they moved, like Mark Pomerantz said, over a year and a half before the indictment in the DA's office came out, this issue would not even be there. Donald Trump beat the system. Let's just be fair about the whole thing. He beat the system, especially as it relates to accountability. How? By delay. The fact that every motion took months upon months for the judge to ultimately rule. And I'm not talking about Judge Merchan here. I'm talking about the Second Circuit, then bringing it up for the motion practice up to the writ of certiorari for the Supreme Court with the presidential immunity. It was years. And he did the same thing with the January 6th case with Jack Smith. He did the same thing with the Mar-a-Lago documents case. And all he needed to do is this small one little thing: win the presidency of the United States. And the guy did it. He busted all the odds. It's like 1,000,000,000 to 1. And now you really think that Merchan is going to go ahead and impose a prison sentence after the president of the United States finishes a 4-year term, the day after he ends up leaving the White House via Marine One to Air Force One to Mar-a-Lago to go check in to FCI Miami, or to come here to Rikers Island? I don't think so.
Well, I don't know if that is going to happen exactly, but it should happen. There's no reason why Trump should be awarded for having delayed all of these cases. He's the one that asked for the delay in the sentencing here. He's the one that brought the motions to try and delay it. The fact that you win a presidential election is not a get out of jail card free. I mean, it doesn't mean just because you win an election, you're not going to be subject to the criminal justice system. Certainly, Mayor Adams, who's running for re-election as mayor in the city of New York, is not going to be arguing to the voters, hey, elect me so that I can stay out of jail if I'm convicted in this bribery case that is pending against me. I mean, that's just not the way our system works. And I think that what Judge Merchan has got to do here is send a very clear message. I mean, if he decides purely based on the merits that Trump doesn't deserve a term of imprisonment, then he should give him probation or whatever the sentence is. But I find it hard to believe, based on all of the circumstances here, the scope of the fraud that is involved, the fact that others served time on these same charges, that he shouldn't
namely me,
right? Yeah, namely you, right? Shouldn't get some kind of time here. And to put that over for 4 years to give him that sentence, really, everyone's going to forget about that. But I think if he does it now, he's in a position to do it. And if he gives him 6 months in prison, stay the prison term, Trump can't even appeal until he's been sentenced. So this whole opinion that we were talking about initially, you can't appeal that until you've actually got a judgment. So he's got to have a judgment in place that involves the sentencing. So to have this go through the proper system, he should be given a sentence. Trump will then appeal it. He can do that during the time he's president. He can have his lawyers do that. Although I guess his lawyers are going to be tied up running the Justice Department, which in itself is an outrage. But aside from that, the system should work like it normally works. He should not be treated like anybody else. He was convicted of 34 felonies, and he should be sentenced on it. And let the chips fall where they may. If it turns out that our president is not only a convicted felon, but somebody who has got to serve prison time at the end of his term, so be it.
Yeah, I think it's a little rough, but I'm willing to accept it. Yeah, accept your take on it. I think more Merchan, if anything, will issue some form of probation, suspended probation, and so on. And I hear a lot of the pundits saying, oh, but he's a first-time offender and so on. By the way, so was I. And when they charged me with bullshit, there was a mistake in my taxes. I acknowledge that. Made by my CPA, but I did sign the document, so I was responsible. I've never been audited in my whole life. I've never not filed taxes on time. I'm not in a cash business. There was nothing hidden. Everything was given to my accountant. They hit me with that too, just to fuck me up. But I think what will ultimately happen, and this is just us bullshitting to one another with my listeners, I think they'll end up suspending the sentence, because by doing that, it means that Trump, the conviction, stays, and that the job of the jury, the 12 members of the jury, was not in vain. Now, I have a funny feeling he won't accept even that. Yeah, he won't accept even that. But yeah, I did 13 months on a 36-month sentence only because of COVID, which, by the way, I do have to thank Trump and, for doing the COVID, the CARES Act, which got me out approximately 2 years early. though I spent it on home confinement until ultimately Bill Barr had me unconstitutionally remanded. But all of this is neither here nor there on the Trump case. That's what I think they'll do. So in that way, the conviction stays. I just hate the fact that the president of the United States has and is a convicted felon if that happens. I have an enormous amount of respect for the office, regardless of who's sitting in it.
Yeah, well, look, we had a mayor of Boston, Curley, who was a convicted felon, and he actually operated
Not
as
the president. They also, by the way, had that in Washington, D.C., Mayor Marion Barry. I was there in D.C. at the time that was all going down. But let me ask you this. Do you think that the denial of the motion to dismiss, you think it signals a more aggressive posture by the judiciary in handling Trump's legal defenses, or you think this is an anomaly?
Oh, no, I think it's a matter of the judge just following the law. If you go through that opinion, it is very clear. He is taking every aspect out of that ridiculous Supreme Court case, which I think was absolutely wrong, and using it in every way possible to show by its purpose, by its terms, that everything that occurred in that case before him was unofficial acts, had nothing to do with the powers of the presidency, and does not come within any way, shape, or form anything to do with the immunity that the Supreme Court is saying could exist. So, no, I think this is a situation, and I think most judges will absolutely follow the law, as Marchand did here. Now, what he does on sentencing, there's a lot of discretion there. The fact that he's never a first-time offender, I've had lots of cases as a prosecutor and as a defense lawyer where my client was a first-time offender and he still got jail time. So that doesn't really, take you out from under imprisonment.
No, it does not. And I'm speaking from personal experience, including not only was I a first-time offender, I mean, my only interaction with law enforcement during my entire life up to 2017, 2018, was I got a speeding ticket in 1985 while driving back to college in New Jersey. The one speeding ticket my entire life. That's the extent of my legal interaction with the law, right? And here, 36 months, that piece of shit, Judge William H. Pauley III, with his bullshit nonsense, listening to the prosecutors, which was just absolutely grotesque. I won't even get into it. You plead guilty in 48 hours, or we file an 85-page indictment against you and your wife. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, yeah, fuck it. What am I supposed to do? But speaking of lawsuits, let me ask you this, because the one thing about Trump, and for better or for worse, he tells you what he intends to do. There is no surprise, believe it or not. He turned around and he said he was going to file appeals if Marchand does this, and he will file, as you said, in the Second Circuit, he will file the appeal. He will then take it up to the Supreme Court. They're going to argue all sorts of things. But he has said that he has a real issue, and he's been saying this literally since 2015 when he calls the news, the fake news, that he has real problems with them. One of the things he said that he intends to do, and now he already did it, is to file a lawsuit against the Des Moines Register, pollster Ann Selzer, and so on. And he now did it. You think this lawsuit is a legal strategy, a PR stunt, or both?
It's a PR stunt, basically. Certainly, if we talk about the case against Ann Selzer, I mean, what is it that he can say she did that was wrong, other than she screwed up on her poll? I mean, that is not an actionable item. The only way that lawsuit would go anywhere is if he can somehow show that she just made it up and she didn't truly believe that her poll reflected those numbers. He'd have to show some kind of intentional malice that she perpetrated there, which I don't think he's going to come close to. But that's going to be his pattern. Look, he somehow bludgeoned ABC into a crazy $5 million settlement. I mean, it's
16,
just 15 million. 15
million. Which is going to be a donation to the Trump Presidential Library Fund, and $1 million in legal fees. $16 million from ABC.
which is crazy. Now, we don't know all the details. I've handled a number of these kinds of cases for media operations, and I'm just surprised that they didn't make a motion to dismiss based on the fair reporting privilege, which essentially allows the media, if you're reporting on what somebody in the government is saying, that you can't be held liable under defamation for that. I mean, clearly, the judge in the Jean Carroll case made it pretty clear that the evidence showed that Trump had raped Jean Carroll. I mean, that was absolutely crystal clear. He said it based on the normal kind of definition that you would give to rape. It's beyond the sort of technical definition that's in this New York State criminal law. And I don't know why they didn't make that motion. The other thing that concerns me about that case is not only it's going to be a chilling effect on all of the other media organizations, because you know he's going to bring other lawsuits and defamation suits against other media organizations. But one of the things that we don't know is, what the discovery in that case turned up. One thing we know for certain is there were supposed to be depositions after around the time of the settlement of both Trump and of George Stephanopoulos. And that is usually, in those situations, it means that all the document discovery has been completed. And they do that so when they have the depositions, they can actually depose people on those documents. So the question is, was ABC concerned about something out there that they turned over that would have made them look bad? Now, we don't know. And in fact, we'll never know, because after the end of every one of these suits, there is a confidentiality agreement that basically prohibits both parties from discussing the case in public or revealing anything about the settlement. So there is a chance that there was something more there, but certainly on the surface, from what we do know, this is a pretty scary development.
To me, and something that I've been saying all along, again, nothing is new here. You may recall how many members of the press, when everything was coming down on top of my head, would say, oh yeah, I had interactions with Michael Cohen. He was an absolute animal, right? He threatened litigation against us if we printed an article which was defamatory to Donald Trump, that it disparaged him, it demeaned him, and so on. Let me be clear about something. Donald Trump is going to change the way that defamation is handled now in the United States. He has now changed it permanently as the result of this $16 million settlement with ABC News. And I know this from two different angles. The first angle was the guy who used to call up the media outlets and say, the story that you are alleging is false. And many times that they were. Many times they were complete horse shit. And what they would then do is say, well, then just deny it. No. Donald Trump has authorized me, because I have an account, a bank account with unlimited funds, to bring litigation against you and your firm for defamation if you continue and you go through with it. If you ever worry about the safety of your home and your family, there's no better time to act. Right now, Simply Safe is extending its massive Black Friday deal for my listeners, where you can get 50% off. You hear that? 50% off a new Simply Safe security system. Simply Safe, it's the home security that I trust. I mean, I've been using it now for years, and I love the peace of mind that it brings, knowing that my home is protected 24/7. So get 50% off today just by visiting simplysafe.com/mea culpa. I mean, this is your last chance to protect your home at Simply Safe's lowest price of the year. I mean, look, when I close my door at night, I need to be able to sleep. I need to be able to sleep safely. And that's why I use Simply Safe to protect my home and my family. I mean, Simply Safe, it's a new way to protect your home that stops intruders before they break into your home. I mean, old school systems, they only take action once somebody, God forbid, is already inside your home. And you know what? that's too late. Simply Safe's Active Guard outdoor protection, it changes the game. And it changes the game by preventing crime before it happens. And if somebody's lurking around or they're acting suspiciously, those agents see them in real time. They talk to them directly. They set off spotlights, and they could even call the police before the intruders have a chance to break in. Plus, here's the nice part. There's no long-term contracts. There's no cancellation fees, and it's literally around $1 a day for all of this protection. And Simply Safe is extending its massive Black Friday deal for my listeners. So this week only, right now, this week only, you can get 50% off any new system with a select professional monitoring plan. So this is your last chance to claim their best offer of the year. Head to simplysafe.com/mea culpa. That's simplisafe.com/mea culpa. There's no safe like Simply Safe. Now, I was successful maybe 7 out of 10 times, more so than anybody else. So I know exactly the game that they're playing here. And why? Well, you take a small paper like the Des Moines Register. And how many publications, how many prints do you think that they actually send out? 20,000, right? 30,000 a month? It's easy to calculate the profitability of the Des Moines Register based upon the number of employees. And, you figure an average salary for this one, not including, of course, the CEO, not including, right, the cost of the editor-in-chief. And then you calculate how much profit they make at the end of the year. Well, here's the other side. I know what it's like to be sued by Donald Trump. You may remember he sued me for $500 million in the Southern District of Florida. Now, while that case was dismissed, he dismissed it prior to depositions 3 days before. It still cost me over $300,000 to defend it. What if, for example, a paper like the Des Moines Register doesn't have $300,000 left over in their budget? One of the lines I used to say to these individuals, it's not going to be $300,000. It's going to be like in the lawsuit against the New York Times, it's going to be millions. So if you think that you're going to win this case, and if you think that putting out this fake, defamatory, derogatory, demeaning article about Donald Trump is worth the future of your shit periodical, I fucking dare you to do it. Because I have explicit orders from my boss to immediately engage in litigation to protect his name, his reputation, and so on. And that strategy works. That strategy is now precedent with the ABC decision.
Yeah, no question about it. Keep in mind, though, papers like the Des Moines Register are going to have libel and defamation insurance. They're going to be able to have it funded by an insurance company, presumably. A case like that is going to be a motion case. It's going to get decided by a judge and thrown out by a judge. But again, there is still that chilling effect. When you know you're going to be sued, you've got to use time. It's not just even the money for the lawyer's fees. It's the amount of time that the company has to, put into it to actually defend that case and to kind of mobilize their whole organization. I represented the Albuquerque Journal for a long time. And we had a number of these things after the Journal did an expose on organized crime and public officials working in the state of New Mexico. And there was a lot of work put into that. And fortunately, the publisher there, felt it was a civic duty to fight this stuff and prove a truth defense, because truth is an absolute defense to libel. But not all publications can do that, nor would they want to do that.
By the way, and let me just, as a guy who also was involved in the entire insurance for the Trump organization, yes, we had liable as well, but there was like $1 million cap on it. And that's the Trump organization, which makes a lot more money than, for example, the Des Moines Register, right? So I'm not sure what plus they're going to also it's not a dollar number one. They have a deductible that's going to be made. So, there, as you just said, there's a lot to get into as far as considering whether or not putting out that one article is really worth the headache. And again, I know this personally. I know this because when he sued me, I can't even begin to tell you how much time I spent dealing with the lawyers in order to just get him to a point where he had to appear. We did court-ordered depositions, and that got canceled the first time. The second time, the attorney wasn't able to make it. And then the third time, then we had to make a motion back to the court again, motion. And then, of course, the judge taking 60, 90 days. I mean, it was insane. So I lived with this tsuris, this headache, this anxiety for like 6, 7 months. And we didn't even get to depositions, which brings me to a question that is sitting on my mind. Do you think that this lawsuit could potentially, had it gone through, or actually, let me go back to that. I'm talking about the lawsuit now, the one with Ann Selzer. You think
Right.
that lawsuit could inadvertently expose Trump's campaign data or polling strategy through the discovery process? That may be something that they don't want discovered.
Well, look at that. That's the downside of bringing a libel case, is that when you bring it, you open up your whole reputation, because part of your damages are the reputation. And you're claiming that you lost reputation and somehow you were damaged. And once you open up that door, boy, you can just go crazy. I mean, I've given you the example before about the Albuquerque Journal. I mean, we used that lawsuit to basically prove, in fact, that organized crime had infiltrated the state government in New Mexico. And the newspaper would have never had that opportunity, but for the fact that these people were stupid enough to bring the libel cases. But you're right, these things can be turned around 180 degrees on the plaintiff who brings them. Look, it's the same thing happened with Alger Hiss. He brought a libel suit and then wound up going to jail as a result, because the proof came out that he really was involved as a Russian spy ultimately. So these things have a way of biting you in the back. People like to stand up and say, I'll show them, I'll sue them. But there is a downside to this, because it does open you up to a lot of discovery.
This happens and I've said this many times, this is Trump's superpower. This is his actual superpower. He has the ability and the guttural instinct to create major delays, now to be able to use the legal system to his advantage. He's talked about the fake news media, the lies that they promote, and so on and so forth. And I'm going to tell you from a personal standpoint, somebody who had more lies told about them by media, never able to bring defamation claims against them, whether it was the Steele dossier, 11 allegations against me, all of them are lies. Never been to Prague, never paid off Russian compromise. I don't own a home in Sochi directly next door to Vladimir Putin. My father-in-law is not the largest real estate developer in Moscow. In fact, my father-in-law has never even been to Moscow. Yeah, he was Ukrainian, so he was part of the Soviet Union. He's never even been to Moscow. I mean, it's one lie after the other, including things that took place when this guy, Jonathan Fry from the San Francisco IRS agency, when he released my tax returns and they were talking about hidden SARS or my alleged affair with Stormy Daniels, that it really wasn't Trump that had the affair, was Michael Cohen, and Donald was protecting me out of friendship, right? I wish he would have protected me, right? Out of friendship. I can go through 100 lies told about me, literally 100 lies. I had one woman by the name of Louise Mensch, right, who turned around and said that I must have gone to Prague with an Israeli passport because as a Jew, I must have an Israeli passport. I mean, not only is it anti-Semitic, it's also wrong. In fact, I'm embarrassed to even say this, I have never been to Israel. And, I will go. And because I definitely want to go, but I've never even been there, let alone have another passport. You know what I'm saying?
Oh
So
yeah, no,
I
absolutely.
kind of like the fact that he's now shoving it up media's ass, because here's what I believe. Media has become sloppy. Everybody is in a race in order to get, the breaking news story, to be first out, to get the clickbaits, to get the name recognition. And they do the most minutia amount of investigatory work. They don't fact check. They go straight to it based off of two sources. So if you and I, Nick, decide that we want to put out a rumor, and I call Mary Jane from from QRX news outlet, right? And you say, well, who else could confirm that? Oh, Michael Cohen can. And then they call me. I say, yeah, absolutely. I was there when it was all going down. They will write that story, right? And they will give us both anonymity. It'll be on background and so on. So you could cause tremendous amount of damage. In some respect, this is, again, Trump's superpower. He's able to make you focus on the tree and ignore the forest. Meaning, the forest is how much damage not having a free press can cause, but acknowledging the fact that news outlets, they fucking lie. And they often get it wrong. And once they get it wrong, because of our technology, how fast information moves, no matter what they do, you never get that back.
Yeah, well, look, that's why you've got a reckless disregard standard in the defamation laws. It's very important that news outlets be very careful and make sure that what they're printing can be corroborated across the board. You can't act recklessly. You've got to be certain of what you're publishing, and that's why we have the law that we have that says you can't act with malice or reckless disregard. The problem is that the news industry over the years is really kind of consolidated, and there are fewer really fine newspapers in the country that will do the work that needs to be done from an investigative standpoint, mainly because it's so expensive, and there are fewer papers and they're not making as much money. So it kind of all feeds off each other. But the fact of the matter is, I think that at least in the next 4 years, any news organization is going to have to realize that if they're going to be doing investigative work, if they're going to be publishing exposés, they've got to make sure that they dot all their I's, cross all their T's, and make certain that the investigation they're doing is totally justifiable, so that ultimately you can go to a jury and say, look, we did everything we could to check out this story. It was corroborated over here by 6, 7 people. There were documents that also corroborated it. I mean, it's almost like arguing a case to a jury when you've got an accomplice witness who's testifying against the defendant. You've got to have everything lined up and make it as tight as a drum.
See, but look, I'll give you an example, one more, right, as it relates to me, and why I actually like the fact that Trump is changing the way defamation handles. Do you remember the allegation that I received that I was paid $400,000 by Ukraine to arrange talks between Ukrainian president and Trump? At that time, it was Poroshenko. Do you remember that?
Yeah, vaguely.
Yeah. Well,
it
was May 25th or May 23rd, give or take, of 2018. Absolutely untrue. Lie. It was proven that it was a lie. In fact, they had paid their lobbying firm $400,000, but I was never part of a lobbying firm. I was never part of the firm that's on K Street or wherever else that they paid it. Never even heard of the firm. CBS News covered it, wrote it that way. The Week, The Hill, Politico, Business Insider, Yahoo, you name it. Every single news agency out there. Cohen takes $400,000 and so on. You can't imagine. Not one of these outlets ever came back and printed a retraction. Now, Was I able to bring a defamation suit against them? The fact that they were absolutely wrong? No, but you know what Poroshenko did? He brought in action against the group that ended up putting it out. I forget who it was. He brought the action in England, in the
Yeah.
UK, and
Yeah,
he
libel
won.
laws are different there.
And he won. And not only did they have to print a retraction on it, they paid legal fees and they paid him like £100,000 or something like that in defamation costs. All right. That's the difference. And you can't imagine until you are at the very center of this fucking lie that just crushes you day in and day out, day in and day out. Photos you all over television. Cohen, takes $400,000. It's all done. How much money do you think all those news outlets made off of bashing my name? Right? This lawsuit, this scenario with ABC and now the Des Moines Register and Ann Selzer, not only does Trump control many of the courts, and he'll bring those actions in probably Texas, right, where he's got the judges, no doubt. But on top of that, he's got real money behind him to bring all of these lawsuits. And not only does he have money, he's got money behind money in order to do it. And this is going to change how the free press works in this country. I am certain of it. Now, I want to then jump on and ask you this, because another thing that you've seen is this massive pilgrimage to Mar-a-Lago by these tech CEOs, all to bend the knee, kiss the ring, however you want to describe it. What do you think motivates these leaders to go there, to bend the knee, to kiss the ring, despite the controversies surrounding him?
Well, I think it's pretty obvious. I mean, they have business interests. You take Jeff Bezos, he kept the editorial endorsing Kamala Harris from being published because he's afraid that unless he kisses up to Trump, Trump can undermine other business interests he has. And the same goes for the Los Angeles Times. You've got these billionaires that own pretty influential newspapers that are now being undermined by Trump because these people have other interests and contracts with the government and other kind of financial interests that they're trying to protect. That's what's going on here. They're all trying to protect their behinds because they're concerned that somehow Trump is going to do something that will undermine their financial positions. That's what's going on. It's that simple. No other reason.
You think that this dynamic is unique to Trump's presidency, or do you think that this is some sort of a long-standing tradition in U.S. politics?
Put it this
with
way.
A new twist, of course.
Yeah, I mean, it's unique to the extent that it's this blatant. It's this basically being said in public, and it's blatant as to the number of people that are doing it. And it's, yeah, I mean, even Trump, in the sense of putting all those oil and gas CEOs in a room and telling them that, hey, if you contribute money to my campaign, you're going to save a lot of money here, there, and whatever in terms of less regulation. I mean, he couldn't have been more blatant about this. And that's part of what Trump does. The things that, might have been little side deals over the past years or things that were talked about. Now he's just doing it out in the open, and he's doing it in a much grander scale. That's what's
you got to say the guy's got some big set of balls, right? I mean,
no
he's
question.
doing it right out in the open. He says he's going to do it. And the crazy thing, that's what the plurality of Americans heard and elected to vote for.
That's exactly right. And on top of it all, you've got this Supreme Court case. You talk about delay. I mean, they basically set it up so he didn't have to be convicted on the January 6 crimes last March. But the Supreme Court case is basically giving him open season to do whatever he wants. I mean, he can't be investigated or convicted of anything now. I mean, as long as he gets one of his cabinet members involved and makes it clear in some way this is an official act and tries to dress it up as an official act, he's clear and free. I mean, that's what's really dangerous now, is that he has got carte blanche to commit crimes that nobody else could do before. I mean, if you just take what happened in Watergate, none of those things now could be investigated or prosecuted under the current state of the law with the Supreme Court.
It is amazing. Let me ask you this then. You think that there's any legal exposure for these tech executives for what they're doing at, for example, Mar-a-Lago, where they're obviously trying to impact regulatory decisions and so on? Because it could be construed as lobbying or a campaign finance violation. You think that
Well, I
that's a
think
possibility?
the only legal possibility here is you'd have to show a quid pro quo bribery. I mean, the bribery laws are pretty much straitjacketed now that you can't just give somebody money and hope you're going to get something out of it. You've got to show a very specific quid pro quo that you're giving money in return. The government official is going to do something for you. That's not so easy to prove. And the way that Trump is doing it, it's more of a wink and a nod as opposed to anything that's really explicit. So, in a sense, yeah, it's bribery, but it's not bribery that's going to be prosecutable. That's the problem.
And today's episode is actually brought to you by Ali. It's clean, fresh nutrition that your dog need in 5 flavors that they're going to absolutely flip over. I mean, you don't have to be a veterinary nutritionist to know that feeding your dog real, whole foods with minimal processing, it's one of the best choices that you can make for their health. A perfectly portioned, whole, fresh food diet has been proven to extend your pup's life by 2.5 years. You hear that? 2.5 years. And who doesn't want more time with their best friend? With absolutely no harmful fillers, no preservatives, Ali, it's made in U.S. kitchens with ingredients carefully sourced from trusted growers and producers around the world. Because the time between Ali's gentle cooking and your dog chowing down is minimal, they don't need preservatives to extend the shelf life. I mean, with 5 protein first recipes like fresh beef with sweet potatoes, fresh turkey with blueberries, or fresh lamb with cranberries, you might start thinking, damn, my dog eats better than I do. And you know what? That's probably true when it comes to Ali. So look, here's how it works. I told my neighbor, go out and you fill an Ali's 30-second quiz, and then they'll create a customized meal plan that's based on your pup's weight, the activity level, and other health information. Ali then crunches the numbers and they recommend the right recipes and daily portions for your precious pup based on hundreds of thousands of real dog results. And get a load of this. For the first timers, Ali will send out your pup's first box with 2 weeks worth of meals and a guide on how to gradually switch them over to their new diet. Ali offers 3 meal plans to choose from so that you can choose from between a full fresh plan, fresh topper plan, or a mixed plan with their freshly baked recipes for your special fur baby. I mean, they also have treats and supplements. I mean, you think that you're talking about a person. You're not. You're talking about your favorite animal. You're talking about your pup. Ali's biggest sale of the year is here. So listen to this one. For a limited time, you get 70% off, 70% off your first box, plus a free bowl and a storage container. So head right now to Ali.com, fill in your dog's details, and use code Cohen to get the lowest price of the year on a personalized meal plan. And this offer ends December 6th, so act now. Head over to Ali, that's OLLIE.com, and enter code Cohen to get 70% off your first box. Again, you can get 70% off your first box, plus the free bowl and storage container. So head to Ali, OLLIE.com, fill in your dog's details, and use code Cohen to get the lowest price of the year on the personalized meal plan for your pup. Go now. I mean, even for example, I know from reporting that Trump intends to do away with the EV credit, the electric vehicle credit, which is like $7,500 or something like that per new vehicle. Toyota is obviously freaking pissed. Elon Musk at this point doesn't care, right? Because he's more now concerned with crypto than anything, not to mention, I mean, he's got more money than Toyota. Could it not be said, for example, that that plan was hatched out over a Mar-a-Lago burger?
Well, you got to prove there was a quid pro quo. That's the problem. It's a
Yeah.
question of proof. Can you prove it? I mean, you might smell something that doesn't seem right, but unless you can actually prove with testimony or documents that, hey, I'm going to give you X number of dollars for your campaign, and I expect you to take away this particular regulation, and you promise to do that, unless you've got something that can prove that either explicitly or circumstantially, it's going to be tough.
Yeah, real tough. Well,
Yep.
let me ask you this. You got to give Trump credit where the credit is due. He just doesn't give a shit about old standards, old norms. None of that really matters to him. He wants to operate the government the way that he would have, and the way that he did operate the Trump organization. Literally, it's his decision, total authoritarian.
No question. I mean, the guy has no understanding of how civics work, how our government works, how there are checks and balances. Advising consent, he doesn't really give that much weight, and he's trying to get around that any way he can by essentially going to senators and telling them unless they vote for his people, he's going to set up a primary fight against them 2 years from now. That's the kind of stuff he's doing. And it really ignores our basic form of government that is premised on checks and balances. I mean, he doesn't understand it to begin with. I mean, the worst case I remember was when he first took office, he was talking about the Supreme Court issuing bills like they were a legislature as opposed to a court. I mean, I think the guy is just really clueless on a lot of this stuff. But what he's not clueless about is what you're saying is that he wants to have total control. He thinks the president is somebody who runs everything without regard to any of these guardrails or checks and balances. That's the way he operated before, and he's going to try and operate even bigger time this time around.
Oh, not try. He will succeed in doing it. A big argument and a big right now conversation is about Biden and the 1,500 commutations and the 39 pardons that he handed out. It's been met with a lot of mixed reaction. How do you view the political and the legal significance of this decision? And you think that there's going to be more coming?
Oh, I think there'll probably be more coming, but I'm assuming that these pardons and commutations at least went through the legal process that normally attaches to these things through the Department of Justice. There's no way that people in the White House by themselves did this. I mean, I would assume that the Pardons Office and the Department of Justice looked at these things before they were done. A number of them were people who hadn't committed violent crimes. And there are good reasons for pardons. I mean, people have straightened out their lives, they've moved on. And this is a blemish on their career. And if they've done good things since, that ought to be recognized as well. So there's good reasons to give pardons. The problem is Trump has basically used it as an instrument of obstruction of justice. He did that with Roger Stone, and he did it with Paul Manafort, his former campaign manager, and basically told them if they hung tough that they were going to get pardoned. That's why Paul Manafort, who first agreed to cooperate, basically walked away from that cooperation agreement. And now you've got Trump essentially promising to pardon all of these individuals that went after police officers and tried to go after members of Congress on January 6th.
Oh, we're going to get to that. That's a follow-up question here. But, it's more like, these 1,500 commutations, what a lot of people don't seem to understand is that I believe the vast majority, if not almost all of them, had to do with like low-level marijuana convictions. Well, right now, it may not be federally legal, but it's legal in every single state. I mean, I can't walk on 3rd Avenue without coming across a dispensary. You can't walk anywhere in Manhattan without smelling somebody smoking marijuana in the street, right? Those are the 1,500 commutations. I mean, it's funny because let's say the guy, I mean, I had guys that were with me when I was in Otisville that were on these sort of, if you were black and you got hit with a marijuana charge distribution, they all got somewhere between 9 to 10 years. If you were Hispanic, you got 7 years. And if you were white, you got 3. That's really the way I saw it. Mind you, one guy moved like 10,000 pounds of marijuana when he got caught. Today, you have publicly traded companies that are moving 10,000 pounds in an hour. So
Right.
I understand these commutations. And yes, they did come out from the Department of Justice and the Pardon Office. The 39 pardons, some of them are mixed here and there in terms of various different aspects. But I want to ask you from a legal perspective, how do presidential pardons and commutations differ? And why do you think that Biden is focusing more on the commutations than, for example, the pardons? Do you think that we're going to end up seeing, for example, you have hundreds of people on various different lists, Trump enemies lists? Why are they not making a bigger issue out of that?
Well, because I don't think he's done it yet, but everybody knows he's going to do it. Certainly, he's going to go after people, and the question is, how is he going to do it? But he's set himself up because he completely is going to be able to control the Justice Department now. It is going to be political hacks from the top on down. He's got Pam Bundy, who is somebody who was essentially dropped a lawsuit when she was Attorney General in Florida, the lawsuit into Trump University after she received a $25,000 contribution from Donald Trump. She was out there campaigning for him in not 2016 and 2020, this 2024. I mean, she is totally involved in the politics of Donald Trump, was out there arguing that the election in 2020 was rigged, backing up Rudy Giuliani and all the nonsense that he was spewing out there. And you've got below her his criminal defense lawyers, who he's appointed as Deputy Attorney General and the assistant to the Deputy Attorney General. The number 3 person in the Justice Department is another one of his lawyers who was his appeals lawyer. I remember during Watergate, where during the Saturday Night Massacre, Elliot Richardson, who was then the Attorney General, was so worried that Nixon would put a political hack in the Department of Justice and destroy its reputation, that he and Bill Ruckelshaus, who was a deputy Attorney General, got together with Bork, who was the number 3 guy, the Solicitor General, to make sure that he actually did the firing of Cox so that Nixon would not substitute him for some crony from the White House. I mean, people have been concerned all along about the Department of Justice being independent. That ain't happening anymore. That's not the situation. And so we're in some really rocky times, just in terms of Trump being able to pick up that phone and telling his Attorney General, I want so-and-so indicted.
Right. And so, as for my question, which is about Biden, and why is he then not focusing more on the pardons for these individuals that are on an enemies list, knowing that when Donald Trump says he intends to do something, I don't know how many more times I could say this, whether it's to my listeners, yelling it like on CNN or MSNBC, or just playing from the rooftops. When he tells you he intends to do something, he intends to do it. And now he's got Jupiter aligned with Mars, right? This is all now in order for him. Why is Biden not acting more swiftly? He certainly was smart enough and parental enough to take care and to do it for his son. What about everybody else, myself included?
Well, I think we don't know what he's going to do yet. I mean, still, he's got, a month to do this stuff, or more than a month to do it. A lot of the people who are on this enemies list may not want a pardon.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Then don't accept it, but don't interfere in somebody else's
He could easily take Kash Patel's enemies list that's at the end of his book and essentially pardon all those people. And if you're going to do it, you've got to do what you did for Hunter Biden, in the sense you've got to make it for 10 years, because there are a number of federal criminal violations that now have 10-year statute of limitations. It used to be they're all 5 years, but a lot of these banking violations have been extended to 10 years now by statute. So that's why you have to do it. And as to Hunter Biden, I mean, it's obvious to me why Joe Biden did it. He didn't say why he did it clearly. But once Hunter Biden was sentenced in that tax case, there was little doubt in my mind he was going to get a prison sentence. And if he
I
did,
got one.
he was going to be totally at the mercy of Donald Trump, as you well know. I mean, who's to say that Hunter Biden wouldn't be put in solitary confinement like somebody else we know? Who's to say that he wouldn't be put in a prison that's up in Alaska or on the Texas border?
Well, they can't do, because there's actually a federal statute that says you have to be within 100 miles of your primary residence.
Well, that's something new since I was an assistant. But you have total control. I mean, the Department of Justice controls the Bureau of Prisons. And so essentially, the Department of Justice can tell the Bureau of Prisons anything they want to do. Look what they did with you when you were out for COVID and then put you back in because you were publishing a book on Donald Trump and trying to keep you from doing that. So I think that Joe Biden was right to do that with his son, just because I think the concern was putting his son in the hands of Donald Trump. That would have been the worst thing he could do.
Remember, people like me, we're somebody's son also. Right. And that's why I say I'm glad that he did it for son. If I was president and Hunter was my son, I would have done it a long time ago. And I would have let everybody know. Instead, everybody, the Democrats, we just fucking cower all the time. Trump, he's right out there telling exactly what he's going to do. My last question that I wanted, because the hour goes by quick here, is what you brought up. Trump's plan to pardon all of the January 6th insurrectionists, who he refers to as hostages. My question I want to ask you, can the Department of Justice or other federal authorities, or Congress for that matter, anyone take any proactive measure right now before Trump is inaugurated to counteract the potential for mass pardons of these January 6th insurrectionists?
Nope. In fact, the Supreme Court in that immunity decision made it pretty clear that the pardon power belongs only to the president. And even when Trump was using the pardon power to keep his former campaign manager there, Paul Manafort, in line by promising him a pardon, you couldn't even prosecute Trump for obstruction of justice for that, because according to the Supreme Court, you can't look into the motives for offering a pardon to somebody. That is exclusively absolute immunity for the president. All of which, I guess, I would say goes to your argument that President Biden ought to just take that list from Kash Patel and give them all pardons. I mean, that would take care of the problem.
I mean, I think there's more like 6 lists, by the way, Nick, not just Kash Patel.
You'd probably need all those lists.
Okay, so will it be more than 1,500? If he's willing to give 1,500 commutations, anybody whose name appears on an enemy's list, why not just do it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really the only way you can counteract it, because otherwise, you certainly can't stop him from pardoning the January 6th defendants. I mean, is he going to pardon Stuart Rhodes, who got, close to 20 years in prison?
Yes.
Yeah.
18 years.
Yeah. And all these other people that were, out there beating up cops. I mean, this is Mr. Pro law enforcement president. I mean, this is what he's going to do. And he says he's going to do it.
He may not pardon him, sure, but he may not pardon him, Nick. He may just give him a commutation of the sentence.
Well, either way, it doesn't really make a difference, because some of these people are in prison for a long time.
Yeah.
Certainly someone like Stuart Rhodes deserves to be in prison and ought to stay there. And whether it's a commutation or a pardon, I don't think anybody's going to really understand the difference anyway. Trump can do it. It's in his wheelhouse of the president of the United States. And this is another example of this opinion that was issued by the Supreme Court that really just set up Donald Trump to do whatever he wants to do, which is extremely scary.
Well, Nick, thank you for making us smarter. It's going to be a rough 4 years ahead.
Yeah, tighten up your seatbelt. It's going to be a tough 4 years going forward. That's for sure.
Exactly. Nick, thank you. Great to see you again, my friend. And
Same here.
hopefully I'll be getting you back on very, very soon, because there's going to be, I guarantee you, more to talk about. So thank you
No
again.
question. No question. Thank you.